This vehicle here behind me will be a paradigm shift for Volkswagen, a change in strategy, change in design, most obvious, and also change in pricing for electric vehicles. This year supposed to start at 20,000 euros, and it will be either called ID1 or maybe ID Up, because this one here is the successor of the Volkswagen Up for the electric world. However, from the space, it should also offer a space of a VW Polo, and it's also lengthwise between an Up and a Polo. Everything of that you need to know about this one here. Even, for example, there's Rivian inside and more interesting features with Thomas and Autogefühl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go with the ID1 or ID Up. Here, first of all, as a show car, but I can tell you a lot of this vehicle. First of all, a completely new design language. They're going away from the sofa ID family design language. More bold design, a simple design. You can see there are not too many elements here at this vehicle. Lower part here will be for the radar sensors and so on, hidden behind that illuminated logo, and also this new headlamp design. And yes, it has round features and round structures, but at the same time it has a stronger stance on the road. And the design department want to do a vehicle that works for everyone again. That's why they also call that concept that way, because they want to serve very young target group here with maybe like you have your first vehicle, but at the same time also elderly customers who say like, I don't want a large vehicle anymore, I want to get along in the city and so on. And it will also have this city EV focus. Once again, going away from the sofa ID design language, making the hood longer, although it's a smaller car. If there will be a frunk or not is not decided yet. We have to keep you updated with that very soon. The length here is 3.88 meters or 153 inches. As I said, the length between Up and Polo. Leah just gave me thumbs up because she knows the length, and sometimes it's hard with the figures, and she says, yeah, that was the right figure. Thank you so much. The wheels, in this case, 19-inch, and also with a three-dimensional depth design. This design will come as shown here. However, the maximum wheel size will probably be 18 inches because with these concepts they try to exaggerate a little bit. But the designer told me that this is maybe 80–90% of the real production car later on. So it is a realistic look. And that also counts here for this helmet look. You can see here, very few design lines, very few elements, no additional black claddings or whatsoever. And then you have this helmet visor design together with the A-pillar. And they are also looking for your feedback if you like this visor helmet design here. And I think so far when you look at this vehicle, I think it will work for everyone. The sofa ID design language maybe had the fans, but they also had some haters. And I think the task of Volkswagen design has always been that it appeals to all of the different target groups. I think that works quite well here. Interesting also that the tail lamps are being repeated in design from the front lamps. So you have the same scheme, front lamps and tail lamps, something that is not done very often actually. And I can soon also play around with the lights a little bit with the different features and so on. Illuminated logo here at the rear as well. And you maybe see, yeah, if you know the VW Up, it also had this glass rear. And this is also something they have taken from that very vehicle. Interesting also that the so far ID models were all rear-wheel drive. These here, they're coming up, ID1, ID2 or ID Up or ID Polo, they will be front-wheel drive again. This one here, maximum of 95 horsepower. This top speed at the moment for this one here also limited to 130 kilometers an hour or around 80 miles per hour. So this is not an Autobahn vehicle, it is more a city EV. That's why also the range won't be that high. It's more like a daily use vehicle without longer trips. Volkswagen speaks of at least 250 kilometers of range. If you take realistic figures and also maybe like bad weather and so on, maybe rather calculate with 200 kilometers or 125 miles as a realistic figure. But again, this large range is not the main purpose of this vehicle. There's no info on the battery sizes as we're speaking, and also not if there's like maybe one or maybe two or something like that. Why going for front-wheel drive again? It's a cost issue because when you centralize everything in the front of the vehicle, the electric motor and also many more parts, it actually saves them maybe also like the cable length and so on. So it's like an economic thing. At the same time, I also think about the first-time drivers who maybe want more security, more safety while driving, because yeah, obviously there's maybe understeering, but no oversteering. And when you can't drive a car, let's say, don't have so much experience yet, in the rear, of course, it can give more oversteering. For me as a car enthusiast, I always like the ID so far, the approach to give you rear-wheel drive because it handles better. You can also have the great turning circles. This will also have a decent turning circle because it's a short vehicle, but we've seen it, for example, with the ID7, which is a really long, full-size vehicle. At the same time, when you get it with rear-wheel drive, it has such a narrow turning circle because you can turn in the front wheel. It's so wide, actually. So that will not be possible with the front-wheel driven cars, but it will still be decent because these here are a little bit smaller then. To understand the whole idea, there will be this one here as the ID1 or ID up, and then, as I said, the ID Polo, a segment above that. We could already take a look at that vehicle for you. It's also somewhat close to reality what we could shoot for you there. There we could shoot both exterior and also something of the interior. Soon I'll also give you more information on the interior of this vehicle and also something like a glimpse of the segment above that, the ID Polo. Interesting also that this front wheel architecture is also used for the so far Polo and the Golf, and that means we can also expect some GTI models. I think maybe both for the ID Polo and also for the ID Up to make it a little bit more spiced up. But I think what works very well with this vehicle is that they want to sell it at about 20,000 euros, so making it more affordable in the EV segment. At the same time, this vehicle does not look cheap. It rather looks more upmarket. It rather looks more expensive than it actually is. And it's interesting that, why is that actually? Because they left out so many elements, like, for example, an additional black cladding here or something like that. This more simple, maybe a little bit monolithic design with few design lines actually creates a more timeless look. And I think that is also something that like the Volkswagen bestsellers were all about, that they always had this really timeless look. And I can also play with the lights. Pretty cool here with the iPad app, so to speak. I can activate the so-called pixel shower here in the front. Then everything gets activated at once. Show here like the depth of the front headlamps. That's actually pretty cool. And for example, this lower part can be used as a battery status indicator. So it shows the state of charge then while charging from the distance, that you know actually where you are. Or of course, always important, the turning indicators that also work in a kind of depth thing. So interesting new way to show it. Let's see if this is actually allowed by law then at some point. And what else can it do? It can also twinkle. Look at that. There we go. What do you think about that? So I also carried here my toy back to the rear, and I can also show you the pixel shower at the rear. You can see here the individual segments, and yeah, well, let's see how much we see from that in the final concept. The most important thing is, of course, the illuminated logo here in the rear. And here the top part, this will actually be then the third braking light, of course, mandatory by law, and I can also show that to you here. Yeah, so I could get used to, controlling the lights from a vehicle with a phone. I mean, so far it was maybe possible to open or close, but that would be cool, right? And the turning indicators, of course, for you, in this case, will be like this. Not sure if this is actually allowed by law at this point. And what can we already tell you about the interior? This is just an exterior show car, but there are some visualizations for the interior already. And I have a picture right here, and we can take a look for very important things. First of all, the screen will be relatively large and a horizontal focus. And for me, what is very important here, real buttons at the steering wheel, volume, the switch right here, then cruise control, the right side then to control more functions like music and so on, and also the digital instruments integrated horizontally into the dashboard. There will not be a head-up display because that's too expensive for that segment though. Rest of the things you will have in the screen, but also, and that's important to me especially, the climate buttons. It's not like a scroll wheel, it's more like up and down. We've already seen something of that in the ID2 concept, which will be the segment above that. So we already took shots of this vehicle because that one had an interior we can actually show to you. And yeah, to me it's always very important because also customer feedback has shown that not everything should be in the screen, especially while driving. You just want to look straight and then control something just blindfolded basically without having to look in the screen. And you see here, the screen here A very clean setup as well. And the secret behind that one is also that they will use the Rivian software architecture. They have basically two corporations now for everything in China with XPeng and for everything then in the US and in Europe with Rivian. And they were at this point, we're saying like, hey, let's get a strong partner who knows more about the software and also maybe the hardware behind the software. And we take care about the things that we can do best, like the hardware, the car itself, like, you know, like the chassis stuff and the experience from engineering and so on. I think that's a good pairing and a good decision to finally say, hey, let's get someone on board with that. And more German manufacturers are doing that. And interesting also here with the central glove box and right next to it, some more open space and like maybe like a luggage design, so to speak. And this will be a deployable speaker here, Bluetooth speaker. You can take it out of the vehicle, maybe like for camping or whatever. And this is here a middle console. You can slide backward and forward. So you can either serve the front passengers or the backward passengers. Of course, this one here, like from the rear space, won't have as much space as the segment above that, the ID2. And in the ID2, I've seen like a very good idea. I would like to see actually both in this vehicle and also in the ID2, this rear bench you can actually fold up and have space underneath. Because this front wheel drive architecture actually enables you to then have space at the rear because you don't have the rear electric motor there. And that could actually enable you to have more space than even underneath the bench. We have to see if that becomes reality or not is of course also a cost factor. And what we can also tell you is that the trunk will be at 305 liters of capacity. And it is supposed to be like this up segment. The up was very famous for having a lot of space on very, short dimensions basically. And this is exactly what this car also wants to do in the interior. So although the length is between the up and the Polo, the interior space is supposed to be at least the one of the Polo. And also look here at the seats. They have this integrated head restraint. So a sporty look for the entry segment vehicle. Here you can see this middle console that can be slid forward or backward. Here again some like luggage design inspiration here. And you can also really see something of the space dimensions. So it will be a four-seater, by the way, like no middle seat, but the four-seater. So the past few years have been really tough on Volkswagen. Recently, of course, less sales of the vehicles in China, like all of the other European brands, because the Chinese customers also buy the Chinese EV now. And I mean, when I was in Beijing, like 2014, all of the cars were Volkswagen there because they were #1 seller. And when I was in Guangzhou and also in Shanghai just last year, I haven't seen so many Volkswagen anymore. They were all full of the new Chinese EV brands. And that's, of course, a large problem for the European manufacturers because the profits go down, the sales go down, especially there. I mean, they're still selling quite well in Europe, for example. North America for VW also kind of critical. And I think the most important thing will be customer service. That's something that is often forgotten because what we get for feedback from you is that often when you enter a showroom or when you have like damage at your vehicle, something's not working, you're not treated that well as a customer, and that's something which the brand itself can often not really control that well, but they have to put more effort into customer service. I think that if something is failing at some point, the customers are treated well. That's, I think, #1 that should not be forgotten by any brand, actually. But when you think about what other challenges they have been facing is they had the diesel scandal, diesel fraud, then there were also major software problems, and the whole brand image was of course going down because of that. And it's really tough to gain back a customer you have once lost. And that's something they want to achieve now with this car and also of course with the segment above that, the ID Polo. That they want to say, we want to get back the customers, we want to be like a more friendly brand again, we want to have a more like a design that is pleasing to everyone. Yet again, these classic Volkswagen values with more stance on the road. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to if this is working or not. What is a good decision is definitely to get XPeng for the Chinese market and Rivian for the US and the European market on board to finally say like, hey, there's someone who can do better software, and we just partner up with them to give the best customer experience without wasting maybe 10 more years or something like that. So fixing the software issue, going forward in the design, and then also lower in the price again, because at the end of the day, Volkswagen means the people's car, and the people's car should also be affordable, of course, and that is something this car will also achieve. The only problem about this one is that, first of all, the ID2 or the ID Polo will arrive in 2026, and this one then will come in 2027. And considering, you know, it looks great, but it just comes too late. That is probably the main problem. So definitely the ID2 will come a little bit earlier, and that one you should check out right now and also give us feedback about this one.